advocated daily exercise for the attainment of perfection in body, mind, and soul.
Hundreds of museums, art galleries, and private collections all over the world exhibit works pertaining to the life and activities of Alexander the Great. Never in the history of the planet was a mortal so adulated by the peoples of both the West and the East as Alexander the Great. His image exceeded the bounds of legend. Writers, poets, painters, and sculptors still continue today, and probably will forever, to extol the glory, the courage, and the strength of this marvelous man, whose timeless image sheds the light of inspiration on every type of art.
In 332 BC, Alexander arrived in Egypt, which resembled a vast cemetery, torched, pillaged, and destroyed by the hordes of Cambyses and Ocon. The young army commander liberated Egypt from the hate of Persians and restored the temples of Karnak and Luxor, as well as the sanctuary of Ammon. The temples then enjoyed a new period of religious revival. For the Egyptians, the god Ammon was the creator. Today, visitors can see in the heart of the temple Alexander in the role of a demigod pharaoh, making a sacred offering to Ammon, the god he knew from his childhood years. Endeavoring to follow in the footsteps of history, Diodorus the Latin informs us that in the spring of 331 BC, Alexander headed towards the Libyan desert from Memphis with a small military force of detachments from the units of adjutants, archers, and the royal cavalry. The pilgrim's journey continued through Mareotis along the coast up to Paratonium, and from there into the vast, scorching sands of the desert. The journey took 1.5 months. The difficulties, adventures, the torment of thirst, and the blistering hot desert winds frequently provoked despair and frustration in all members of the group, except for Alexander himself. The young conqueror considered of supreme importance a meeting with the representatives of the greatest and most powerful priesthood in the entire Mediterranean region. When the priests of Ammon saw from the watchtower Alexander and his retinue approaching the sacred site, they sent a group of priests to escort the military commander. Diodorus and Curtius Rufus have noted that the priests led Alexander into the main temple of Ammon. Alexander appeared before the priesthood as a successor and heir to the pharaoh. This was exceptionally significant, as according to the country's religious views, this was the natural temple of the sun god, and his personification, the power that linked man with divinity. So, in this case too, Aristotle's influence on Alexander's religious notions relating to worldwide cult worship played a very important role. A dialogue followed between the prophesying priest and Alexander, while at the same time the priesthood had ordered a sacred ritual and divining ceremony in Ammon's honor. The prophesying priest, acting as the god, took Alexander inside the sanctum and conveyed to him the prophecy not with words, but with gestures and symbols, as Strabo informs us. However, Callisthenes notes that the high priest eventually violated the rules of silence. Because of the utmost importance of the god's pronouncements, Alexander had not only to listen, but also to comprehend every single detail.
Alexander the Great's bold and extremely dangerous undertaking risking his life and the lives of his men to reach the temple of Ammon had a deeper reason than merely that of political advantage. The prophecy imparted to him by the priest of Ammon was a spiritual need. His relationship with divinity, his origins from the lineage of the gods, the aim of his existence in this world, his common roots of Hercules, Dionysos, and Theseus, his divine mission, all these agonizing issues tormented the soul of the young military commander.
His presence in the temple was as familiar to him as being in his childhood home. For his entire life, Alexander was known for his piety and devotion to divinity. Right up to his death, he could never liberate himself from that unconquerable power which impelled him constantly towards the altars and temples of the gods. No one has ever learned what exactly was said between the priests of Ammon and Alexander. However, when he emerged hours later on the portico of the temple gardens and his men saw him from afar, they all felt that they beheld before them a different Alexander. An Alexander who did not seem to be touching the ground, serene, calm, and bathed in the luminous aura of the divine light. The great man of history had embraced his roots. He had seen the non-visible. He had communicated with the light. He had heard the inexpressible and had been persuaded of his divine origin. After his profound experience at the Temple of Ammon, Alexander and his army went east and arrived at today's Afghanistan. Subsequently, in Pakistan, he waged a terrible battle with the fearful war elephants, winning a marvelous victory. Here we see a coin depicting Alexander attacking an elephant. And he appears on this Egyptian coin wearing an elephant skin. This means that he took the animal's strength and made it his own. Within the space of 13 years, the Macedonian warrior, the son of Philip and Olympias, managed to overcome and vanquish the mightiest war machine of the last 2 centuries, the Persian phalanxes, which supported the greatest empire of the world at that time. The phalanxes that had destroyed the most important temples in Attica, Olympia, and Delphi. The phalanxes that provoked fear and terror in the peoples of the East and the West. Alexander changed the course of world history. Macedonia basked in the glory of his dominance, and his people, in a frenzy of enthusiasm for their young leader, were ready to deify him. Vitruvius writes that Alexander once heard from the mouth of the architect Dinocrates, probably the boldest proposal ever made to a mortal on this earth, that the whole of Mount Athos, where today's monastic community is located, to be transformed into a giant statue of Alexander. As we can see in this etching by Johann Fischer, 1656 to 1723, Mount Athos has taken the shape of a giant Alexander, who holds a town of 10,000 inhabitants in his left hand, and in the right hand a receptacle holding the waters of the mountain's rivers, which then flow down to the sea in the isthmus opened by Xerxes. Alexander listened carefully, awed by Dinocrates' daring proposal, but he considered that accepting the creation of such a colossal structure would be far too ambitious and extreme. It could be regarded in the future as an arrogant monument, representing self-deification and disrespect towards the gods. The reason given for his refusal, which impressed Dinocrates and his advisors, was that there was not sufficient cultivatable land at Mount Athos. However, Within him, Aristotle's teachings were uppermost. His great teacher's voice sent a message to the depths of Alexander's soul that he must try, as a mortal, to reach the heights where he can see the gods, but should never try to equate himself with them.